games. It's ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames. Drop a like, drop a sub, go ahead and subscribe to ScrubGames.
How's it going, Scrub Gamers? Welcome back to another video here at ScrubGames, and today we have the next of our Understanding How to Build series, where we go over all the leaders in a given set to help you understand how to build them to suit you and your playstyle. Now we're almost halfway through all the leaders in the set, because we've covered the Vigilance ones, we've covered the command ones. Now we're going to cover the aggression ones, so the red leaders in the set. And we're going to start off with one of the starter deck ones, because in this set now there is two leaders who only have one aspect, so we're going to consider those ones for last. And we're going to start off with the villainy side of aggression. So that's going to start off with Darth Maul, which is one of my favourite characters in the Star Wars universe, and one of my favourite and all-time favourite villains in the series. So without further ado, let's get into the video. But before we do, we're going to make sure that you know to like, comment and subscribe, so that way you can keep updated with my videos as and when they drop. And also by clicking that notification bell, you can get alerts when my videos do drop, so you can watch them there and then on a later date. And also don't forget, we're on our way to 2,000 subs. Every little bit helps, because we're on like really close now. We're in just almost a single digits, just still in double digits at the moment, but the low end of it, to get to our goal of 2,000 subs. And every little bit helps. So if you haven't subscribed, feel free to give it a try. If you have already, then thank you very much. So first things first, we're going to start with the leader, as Star Wars Unlimited is a leader-based game, and that means you can't really play without one, and they're usually what you're going to build your deck around. So with our leader for this one is Darth Maul. So Darth Maul, Sith revealed. He is the new Maul, and he's not just Maul, he is Darth Maul, because there's a difference between the two Maul leaders we've got so far. So we've got a Maul leader in set 3 and Maul leader here. Now the Maul leader from set 3 is just Maul, because that's during the period during I think it's the Clone Wars, when he takes over Mandalore, versus Darth Maul making his first appearance in episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Now in this set there's the new Force mechanic, and there are some leaders that need to use Force mechanic and some that don't. And Maul is one of those lucky leaders that needs to use the mechanic to get the benefits. So first I'll start with his traits. He is a Force and Sith leader, so he's got some tiny little benefits from the Sith, and he's also got the Force trait, which every leader has, and you get some mega benefits from there. Especially in his aspects, there's some good Force cards that require that trait or want that trait to get the full effects. Now, he is a not too early deploying leader, so not too late but not too early, because he deploys at 6 resources. What it means is an epic action all leaders have, well mostly all leaders have, where once you hit a certain amount of resources, you can then deploy him, make him go from the leader area to the ground arena to join the battle. And his is at 6, and he comes down as a 5/6, which is pretty solid stats. 5 being a good amount of power, and 6 being a good amount of health, because it's just at the range of takedown, and a good amount to have as well. Now his effect is the same on both sides, but when leaders, sometimes they do change, so they go from the leader area to, well, when they're on the leader area, so when they deploy, their effect can completely change, or sometimes it just becomes an improved version when they are deployed. And it is technically the same with Maul, just basically the condition for when it triggers is different. So when he's in the leader area, his action is as a cost to exhaust him, so tap him and use the Force. So use the Force trait, Force token from the new mechanic, and then you must deal 1 damage to a unit, and then never 1 damage to a different unit. So you've got to ping 2 things, and the one thing about this is, if there's only one thing in the arena, you ping that one thing and that's it. You just ping that one unit once. You can't ping it again, because remember, it's another unit. This is all about wording to a different unit. But if there's 2 units, you have to ping both of those. And if you control a unit and your opponent controls a unit, you have to ping both those units, even your own, because you have to ping 2 units if that's available. Now when he deploys, his effect is now an attack, and on attack, so when he attacks, you do the same thing, do 1 damage to a unit and 1 damage to a different unit. Now same thing here is that if you control Maul and no other unit, he's got to ping himself. If you control a Maul, if there's only units on the board, or Maul and never one of your units, but your opponent doesn't have any, you got to ping both your units. And so same thing as if your opponent has 1 unit and you have Maul, you have to ping him and your opponent's unit, things like that. So you have to be careful when it comes to it, because he will damage himself. So that's pretty simple with the leader. It's just you have to use the Force mechanic, and it's all about dealing damage, but it's not optional damage, it's mandatory damage. As soon as you trigger it, you have to deal with damage to your 2 units. and if there's less than 2, you have to deal with whatever's available. And if you control a unit and your opponent only controls 1, you have to damage one of your units. So that's the leader, and also he gets a pretty epic showcase. As like this is probably my favorite showcase for the set. Not overall, there have been some really nice showcases from the previous sets, but this is my favorite showcase from the set. I need to try to pick myself up one, just trying to find someone who has one still to buy, really. So if you have one, hit me up. But with the showcase, they're just alternate arts. There's more shiny, blinged out art than bling out your deck, make it a bit more like high value and like shiny. But since it's an alternate art is subjective, so it's only opinion that really matters is yours. So if you're going to play it, fair enough. Well, if you like it, fair enough. If you don't like it, fair enough, because you're only going to be the one playing it, so it's your opinion that matters. So that is the leader, and let's get to the next part. Now this will be where I cover the basics, but I've cut this out because it did get a bit repetitive for myself, because I had to keep saying the same thing over again, and it was covering like the basics of like the bases, the aspects, the penalty, aspect penalty, and even ratios and stuff as well. And where it's getting repetitive, and sometimes there was feedback where people enjoyed that, like newer players liked that information was put in there, but there were some more veteran players who didn't know how to use the chapters, who didn't complain about it being in there when they could always skip. So I decided, just for the sake of myself, I decided to cut it, but then make a video every time a new set comes out to cover the basics for that set. So I've done one for set 5, which covers basically all the first 5 sets, because I didn't do any for previous ones, going understanding the basics. And that's a video that goes over all the basics of the game, like bases, everything like that. So if you're a brand new player or a newer player, you have all that information there. It should be a link, a little card shop. I can't put a video, like for some reason I can't put a little video link to go to it, but I've got a card there, so you can click that, go to that video, check it out. I'll do one for every set, so that way when a new set comes out, anything basic from that, like basic knowledge or basic rulings for anything like that come out for it, then I'll go over that in that video, so you've got the updated basics for that set. But you can always if you're a brand new player, you should check that out and then come back here to learn about Maul. Otherwise, if you're more a veteran or don't need that information, let's carry on. So with every leader, they've got a certain amount of aspect options, and technically everybody has 5, because there's also the aspectless base, being Lake Country from the last set 4, but you don't really want to use an aspectless base unless, well, only leader I know that uses is Hera, and that's just because there isn't great options in just going double either for her, and you get a bit more health from that without having the Data Vault give you 10 more cards included in your deck mandatory. So every leader's technically got 4 aspect options, but it'll be some like the single aspect leaders will have a lot more, because you can go hardcore just 1 aspect. But usually there's 4 aspect combos. And for Maul, that is double red, red blue, red green, or red yellow. So these are the 4 aspect options Maul has available to him, and we're going to go over each one and basically see what the benefits of are and see if they're a good option for him. So first we're going to go over double red, because 1, that's what the options that Maul gives himself, red and black. And then also double aspect is the smallest of the card pools. So first we'll start off with aggression, because aggression is the aspect of Maul, and it's best to kind of see what he brings to the table himself. Now with the basis of aggression, you have the standard, there's 2 types of force bases. Every aspect has one of the force bases being the common ones, where when a friendly force unit attacks, you can gain the force. And then they have a rare base, which is 25 health, that gains the force a different way. Now for red ones, they both need you to attack to be able to gain the force. Whereas the common ones attack with a force unit, so you have to attack with a unit, specifically a force unit. And whereas Temple Destruction, it requires you to attack and deal a minimum 3 damage by combat to your opponent's base. So it could be with anything attacking, but as long as it can do 3 damage by combat to the base to be able to gain the force. So it might be an easier way, allowing you to have more things than just force units to gain the force with the rare base. Otherwise, if you just feel like you're going to go force, then things like Fortress Vader are probably better. Now, if you feel like you don't really care about the force, you don't really fully utilize Maul, then you will have other bases like Tarkin Town, Thermal Slayer, and the 30 health bases that can also be useful. Tarkin Down being a way to finish off units you've damaged but didn't quite finish off. Whereas Thermal Oscillator gives you the best consistency by decreasing your minimum deck size from 50 to 45. Then we'll start off with Villainy, because Villainy heroism are the better sides of any of the aspects, because they have some of the stronger, better cards. And these are some pretty nice ones. I focus on more of a force focus, because you probably want to use more of a force generating base, and most of the time you're going to want to use force units to do that. So for the top row, we have our force generating cards, which are our force units that can attack or things that gain the force. So our turn 1 play, you can potentially have Acolyte of the Beyond. This is a nice effect because it's a 2 cost, play turn 1, and an on attack or when defeated action gain you the force. So a helpful way to make sure you gain the force when putting this out. If it gets defeated, you're going to gain the force. If you attack with it, you're going to gain the force as well. So it gives you more ways to gain it. Then you got some turn 2 onwards units like 5th Brother and Grand Inquisitor, being nice Inquisitors, nice force units that are pretty decent, both going with raid in some sense of form, and pretty solid stats, with Grand Inquisitor having hidden, so it can't be attacked the same turn it's played. You also got your bigger units in Maul, Vader, and Palpatine, the kind of trio of Sith from the first trilogy at least. Well, no, from different trilogies. Yeah, so you got Maul that when it attacks, it can attack 2 things at the same time. So it attacks 2 things instead of 1 at the same time, but the damage is dealt at the same time as well. So when you attack 2 units, they deal all damage at the same time back to you. You got Vader, who is just a good, strong unit, a 6-7/7, but he can always pilot onto spaceships if you want to play some vehicles and get some effects there. And also you got Palpatine, which can dish out damage because aggression is a very damage-focused aspect. So it comes out quite late, not the best stats for its cost, but then can spread out 6 damage however you choose. And don't forget, you also got space units, so while you won't gain the force from these, they are pretty strong ones, and some really good ones, two really good ones from the Villainy side of aggression are Ruthless Raider and Devastator, being very strong ones. Ruthless Raider dealing 2 damage to a unit and a base when it's played or when defeated, so it's a pretty annoying sticky card. And then Devastator being able to come down and deal 4 indirect damage, so damage that your opponent gets to choose, but he's got his own ability where you get to choose indirect damage. So indirect damage, normally the person who has been dealt to gets to decide where it goes, and it can even go through shields and things like that. But with Devastator, he's got a special effect where you get to choose now instead what's on the board where the indirect damage goes. So it allows you to choose where it goes, go 4 at base or 4 across units if you want to. You also got Maul's lightsaber as well, being a very strong one. A 3 cost for 2. Normally you get lightsabers that are cost 3 to go 3/3, but most lightsabers is more on the aggressive side. And if you put on Maul, you get a bigger benefit where it's got when played. If you attach it to Maul, you can attack this. You can attack with him, and for this attack, he can't attack bases, but he gains overwhelm, which means like piercing damage through units. So any excess damage to a unit goes into your opponent's base, and it gives him a big buff with a 4/2. You also got some good events as well that are very, very handy and very good with Maul. So you got Force Lightning, which is a very nice one. At minimum, for 1 cost, you shut off the effects of a unit. But if you control a Force unit, you can then pay extra resources, and for every extra resource, you do 2 extra additional damage to that unit you choose. You can shut off the effects and do damage, which is really strong. You can even get to a point in the later game where you got a lot of resources, potentially take out anything as soon as it comes down, which is cool. You also got Force Choke, which also do damage, and its force benefit is it gets a cost reduction when you control Force units, so it's half the cost, so it's down to 1. It reduces the cost by 1, but it does 5 damage to anything that's not a vehicle, and the controller of that unit gains a card by drawing it. You got Nudist Integration, which is a really nice card. It basically, essentially, for free or for free cost, you can deal damage to a unit that's not a leader until it has 1 less health. And since Maul's got an effect by using the Force to deal damage to 2 different units, you can then deal that last 1 damage to finish them off, making this a pretty nice card that's pretty well utilized by Maul. Now in the normal aggression cards, you do have some good ones as well. Like you've got some pretty nice ones here. Like you got Saving Fangfighter is one of the non-force cards, along with Shams Syndulla and Great Dragon. Those are pretty useful. Like Disable Fangfighter knocks off upgrades, so your opponent has a pilots or upgrades on units or a pilot leader. Knock that straight off as soon as you go on there, get rid of it. Pretty useful, and a unit as well to play that actually does damage. You got Cham, which is like the only ramp outside of green, because normally green is the ramp aspect. This can ramp you where if your opponent's got more resources than you, you can ramp the top party deck. And you got Crate Dragon, which is used usually in combination with Force Throw to guarantee like a certain amount of like a high amount of damage. But it's also a good late game card where as soon as it comes down, anytime your opponent will play a card, you can do damage to the base or one of the ground units equal to the cost of that card they played. So it makes for a good finisher. Now for Force units, you've got some pretty nice ones like Jedi Hiding, Quinlan Boss, and Sarge Ventress, all pretty useful cards. Jedi Hiding, solid stats, hidden, and also when defeated, you can use the Force in more ways to use the Force out of the Maul to then make your opponent discard a card. Then you got Quinlan and Sarge that go together, where Quinlan does 2 damage to your base when he attacks with 6 or more power, and Sarge can facilitate that by when she's played or attacks, giving every unit plus 2/2 for that phase. So pretty solid there, or no, I think it might be 2 power, but I can't see it's quite small. But then we've got some good events and upgrades as well. You got Hotshot Blaster, which it seems to be something that people are doing nowadays, where they're putting Hotshot Blaster and even playing it out of aspect by smuggling it out of aspect, because getting to attack plus 2 extra power in one action is still strong, even though its smuggle aspect is Cunning, so better played in Cunning. You can still use it in out of aspect, still for 5 being able to attack and 2+ extra power to attack from your resources is still strong. Now for events, you got some pretty good ones. So you got Force Throw being probably one of the most hyped cards and one of the strongest cards in the game at the moment with this new set, because it gets a better benefit when you got a Force unit, whereas normally you just you choose a player to discard a card. But if you got a Force unit, you then deal damage to a unit equal to the cost of that card that was discarded. So that's why people use Crate Dragon a lot, because you can discard Crate Dragon from your own hand because you choose a player, even yourself, and then you can use Crate Dragon to guarantee 9 damage, or you use your opponent and see what they discard. You also have the damaging effects like Daring Raid, Open Fire, Bomb and Run, and Planetary Bombardment as well, because aggression is a very damaging focused set, and they allow you to do damage, where Daring Raid, Open Fire, and Bomb and Run do just damage out straight out. Daring Raid, 2 damage for 1 resource, Open Fire 4 for 3 resources, Bomb and Run for 5 resources. You do 3 to every single unit in one arena, even yours and your opponent's, whereas Planetary Bombardment just throws 8 indirect damage to your opponents and they get to choose. But if you've got a capital ship like Ruthless Raider or Devastator, you can do 12 instead. Lastly, we've got the Villainy cards, because there are cards that, like, Villainy is an interesting aspect where it's not only joined with one of the color aspects, but it's on his own cards as well. So you've got some pretty strong ones like Kylo, Darth Tyrannus, Sun, and even Execute Order 66. That's some pretty strong cards. The units are pretty solid. Kylo Ren, a good turn 1. Darth Tyrannus can potentially, if you got the Force, become like ambush with a shield. The Sun makes all of your units more powerful by 2 extra power while you can gain the Force, so it becomes a 7+8/8, which is strong. And Execute Order 66 is a great one to have with Maul, because it's one that can hate on the Jedi leaders. We've got quite a few Jedi leaders now, where it does 6 damage to each Jedi on the board, and then every Jedi unit on board, even yours. And then for every unit defeated this way, your opponent, the controller, gains a clone token. But there are some leaders that have 7 health that are Jedi, so you can do 6 damage to those. Won't finish them off, but you can finish them off with Maul, and where you finish them off with Maul instead of this, they won't gain that clone trooper token, which is a benefit. So those are the cards. Let's check out Double Aspect. So, like I said, Double Aspect is the smaller of the card pools, because essentially you're sacrificing a whole other aspect in Vigilance, Cunning, and Command to have access to these Double Aspect cards. And Red kind of got shafted ever since the start of the game, really, because its Double Aspect cards were the weakest from the beginning for set 1, and over time they've got some new ones, but nothing really amazing or that great. It's probably still one of the weakest Double Aspects in the game at the moment, and it does have some showing in some niche decks, where some decks like to go full on glass cannon and just balls to the wall aggro with the double red, because you can find a lot of power and a lot of damage very aggressively, but then if your opponent managed to even out, then you just fall apart. And also, not only that, but it also got shafted in it's got the least amount of Double Aspect cards compared to all the other aspects. Every other aspect has 12 cards, while Red technically only has 11. And these are the 11 cards here. So when deciding if you want to go Double Aspect for a leader, you need to decide, is it worth sacrificing all other aspect for these cards? And for Red, it's these 11 cards. Now, I would say out of all 11 of these, there are only a certain amount of them that are useful, and these are the ones I think are worthwhile for Maul. And that's just 5 of them, so less than half of them are useful. So you got the units like Bo-Katan Kreese, Relentless Fire Spray, and Paz Vizsla, which are pretty solid units, very good stats for their cost, and also pretty nice effect. Like Bo-Katan, 2 cost 3/3 is very good, and when she's defeated, if there's 15 damage on either player's base, you draw a card for each one. So if you both you and your opponent has 15 damage, you draw 2. If one of you has 15 damage to the base, you draw 1. You got Relentless Fire Spray, which on attack can ready itself to attack again, but you have to wait a turn to do it because you have to play it, which can out rested, so there's no way you can play it inactive in double red, and then attack to be able to attack twice. And then you got Paz Vizsla, which gets 2 damage, or 2 more power for every damage on it. So if you can go to maximum 5 damage on it, because it's health 6, you need it alive by 1 HP at least, then it gives extra 10 power. You also got Aggression, Twice the Prime, which are very good cards. Aggression gives you a lot of good options for it, focusing on like upgrade removal, drawing a card, defeating dealing damage to units, and even also, as well as that, readying things with weak power, like free power and less. You also got Twice the Prime, which is a pretty good one, a very good upgrade to give a unit +4 power, but it damages a unit. But then if you put that on Paz Vizsla, he's not going to get just 4 extra power, he's going to get 8 extra power, because that 2 damage is converted into 4 power. So, is having access to these 5 cards and losing access to those other aspects worth it? No. I wouldn't say the double red is a good option for Maul, but if you want to try it, feel free to do so. Now let's move on to Vigilance. So next we have Vigilance. This is the defensive aspect because it provides you with healing, removal, and defense. And for the force bases, you've got Virgin's Temple as your rare one, which can gain the force once a turn, and only once a turn, because it gains you the force at the end of your turn if you control a 4 health or more unit. So an easy way to gain the force, make sure you guarantee it for your next turn, but you can only use it, you only get the force once a turn. Whereas the other bases, allowing you to tap with a force unit to gain the force, can grant you it multiple times a turn. So those are your force base options to get the most out of Maul's effect. If you don't want those, you've got other bases like Colossus being the base with the most health in the game, but reduces your hand size from 6 to 5 at the opening hand. Owl City can grant him more health when he's deployed, or you have the 30 health bases that just have the standard health really. So those are the force bases, the bases that you can use. Now, we're always going to talk about Anakin when it comes to covering blue on any leader or any blue leader, because it's a very strong leader, probably the strongest and best leader, legendary, that's the one, legendary in the set, and it's got 2 effects that people want to kind of get the effect, like full effect of it, and that's by having both a heroism card and a Villainy card in your discard really. Now, decks are incorporating the opposite aspect because you're either going to have heroism or Villainy in your deck, depending on what your leader has. Then you get the other one in your deck, in your discard. Some leaders do have an easy way of doing it, or some aspects have an easy way of doing it. Some don't really. But red's quite lucky in that it's got quite a few ones. It's got Force Throw, making you discard your own Villainy cards to trigger for it. Heroism cards for it. You got Merrin, who can attack and discard a card to do damage, and then discard a heroism card. Or you got Kiadi, which you can actually play, because since you use the Force, this is what some people have been doing now, which is using Kiadi, because it's a unit that can draw you cards. It will cost 6, but you draw your cards, gain you more things, put a unit on the board, and also give you that heroism card, so when it's defeated, it goes to your discard. So you've got some easy ways to set up Anakin in the red side, especially for Villainy as well. Now for Villainy Vigilance, you've got some pretty strong cards, and it's one of the strongest aspects for Villainy because it acts more as a control aspect. Because the Villainy side prevents you a lot of removal and benefits in just taking out problem cards. So you've got some good turn ones. You've got Pershing if you go for the Virgin's Temple to gain you the force by having 5 health, plus you can start getting cards more often the longer it stays. You've got Karis, which does the same, but also the force units that can do it, gaining the force from the force space. And you've got Talzin's Assassin, be a nice way to also use the Force alongside Karis, both cards that you good benefits on using the Force outside of outside of Maul, and also a solid unit as well, and Force units. You also got the top end being Vader, Dooku, and Snoke, as well being top end cards, being more expensive ones for later in the game, but obviously some good things being the Force trait, but also some good effects, like Vader being able to, it does pair better with a aspect like Cunning or Command, where you can use a way to ambush him out to get the full effect, so make him from a pretty good legendary to a busted one. You got Dooku, which is removal plus what's Virgin's Temple, and Snoke, which just makes everything weaker that's not a leader your opponent controls. You got some good spaceships as well, so you got Devastating Gunship for earlier turn 1 and Devastator for your later game 1. Pretty good spaceships that give you some removal, and you got some good events as well. You got good removal, and even Drain Essence as a way to generate force while doing damage too, which pairs very well with Maul. Now for the non-Villainy side, that's where it kind of lacks a little bit, but there are some good cards. And you got some good Force cards, like the top row is all Force apart from Owen and Ogdo Bogdo. These ones being good benefits, whereas Owen provides you with healing, plus when defeated, you can kind of look for a force unit from the top 5 cards of your deck and add to your hand, so a nice way to kind of get you some of those force units you want. You've got Ogdo Bogdo, which is a very strong card, a 3 cost 5/5, so very good stats for its cost, but it's got some downsides for having such solid stellar stats, where it can't attack unless it's damaged, but if it attacks and defeats a unit, it can heal 2 damage from itself. So Vader being able to ping, like sometimes having to ping your own units can benefit Bogdo, where you can ping him for 1 damage, so he can now attack, so he's technically 5 power, 4 health, and can attack and start wreaking havoc with that power. That's what it is turn 2. And then you got your force cards that you got your turn 1s, like Secret Sage and Night Sister Warrior. Night Sister Warrior to replace itself if defeated, where Secret Sage comes in with a shield to protect himself to make him harder to move. And you got Chirrut and Anakin being your good top end. Chirrut being a good way to make use of the Force more outside of a Maul, and also being a Sentinel, whereas Anakin is a very strong leader, or unit, sorry. You got Entrench as a good upgrade that a lot of blue decks do use, because it's a nice way to kind of use defensively or offensively. And you got loads of good removal. You got Force, outside the normal ones of Takedown, Fellow Dragon, Vanquish, and Rival's Fall. You also have Shattered Point because you're a Force mechanic leader, so you can use the Force with this, just take out anything that's not a leader. So is Vigilance a good fit for Maul? I would say yes, it's a very strong mix, because it's a good aspect when combined, especially in Villainy, with aggression, and also provides you with lots of good tools and good cards to help make Maul better. So let's move on to Command. So next we have Command, and this is the ramp aspect. This is a way to increase your resources more outside of the standard end of your term resource card. And you have some good cards in there that mixes pretty well to play out your bigger things that we've seen that you can have with Villainy. So for the Force bases, you have Mystic Monastery as your rare base, and this can gain the Force without doing anything, just as an action gain the Force, but you're limited to only using it 3 times in the game, so you're very limited in that option. But if you feel you're not going to use Maul that much in a game, you can always opt for that. Otherwise, you can go for normal Force common bases, which it's out to force you to gain Force. Now, the thing with Command is the bases are way better than the leaders most of the time. Like, you mainly see a green base planet with a different aspect leader than a green leader with a different base. And that's because some of the other bases, like Energy Version Lab, being a unit base that can give ambush to a unit as long as you pay the cost, and Data Vault, which can give you more health, and the only downside is having 10 more cards minimum in your deck, so 60 instead of 50. And also you have the 30 health base as well, so there's some options if you don't want to go for a Force base. Not only that, like I said, it's a ramp aspect, so you got some ramp options as well to increase your resources, and you got some pretty good ones here. The main 2 you'll be playing or see played are Super Laser Technician and Resupply. These are both because they can play very early, in the very earliest kind of ramp, where they can be used on turn 2 onwards, and a very good ramp. Like Super Laser Technician is a unit that can then go and attack and then defeat itself the resource. As soon as it's defeated, it can put itself in play as a resource, and it's unique in that it resources and then restand itself, so it's ready to use straight away. Whereas Resupply doesn't need that whole extra steps to kind of do it, where Super Laser Technician needs to be played and attacked and defeated to do it. So Resupply just ramps itself, play it, ramp it. You don't get inactive, you get rested, but you then don't have to do anything. You just play it and then you're ramped. You also have Pricing Ahead, which also extra steps where you need to put on a unit, then defeat that unit to gain the bounty of resourcing from the top of your deck. And your Resupply character was the same thing as Resupply, just basically resources straight away as soon as you play it, but it's later game ramp because it costs 6. Now for Villainy, you have some pretty nice cards. You have some pretty solid ones like we've already seen. You've got Super Laser Technician, which is your ramp. You also have Phase 3 Dark Trooper at the same cost, which is a nice Sentinel, which anytime it survives combat, it gains experience. So the more it attacks and survives, the stronger it gets. You also have Crumb, which is a nice one that kind of gets you like little tiny bits of healing while also providing a little bit of damage to go with Maul, which is pretty cool. And also you have some of your Force units. You have the only 3 Force units in the Villainy side of green is 8th Brother, Darth Vader, and Maul. Now they all have ambush, so if you play Force base that requires you to attack, gain it from this. And they have solid stats, but they're high costing. It's 6 and 7. Now they all have ambush, so they attack, but they can give you good benefits like 8th Brother can potentially power something up, and then it powers itself. So 8th Brother, you can, whenever you play another unit, you can basically give our unit more power, so that's pretty cool by using the Force. Darth Vader gives you more units than the cost paid for him, whilst Maul can also do piercing with Overwhelm and also have something else hit the damage, potentially depending on the trait it's got. You also have your other units like you have Grand Moff Tarkin, be able to give if you go for a more Imperial focus. You can use this to find Imperial cards. And remember, Imperial cards can count towards units as well, or units and upgrades. So not just events and upgrades as well, not just units. And you have some good spaceships and like Relentless and Devastator as very good options. You also have very good events and upgrades like Craving Power and Overwhelming Barrage being two solid ones. They both do similar things. They have similar costs, similar buffs, and both giving 2/2 to unit. They have different ways to do it, where Overwhelming Barrage is a temporary buff, but allows you to spread damage equal to the power out as however you choose. Whereas Craving Power gives a permanent buff since it's an upgrade, but does damage to one thing and one thing only. And you got Palpatine's return for a revival event for any unit that's lost. Then you got Command. That's just Command cards, and now this is where it lacks quite heavily in Command, where you do have the better cards in Aggression, like Villainy. We do have some solid cards, some good cards in just normal Command. Like top row, we've got is your like smaller units, so like Colonel Yularen for healing, Hu Yang for buffing, Maz Kanata for attack, like battle tricks, where you can attack with a Force unit and give it more power for that attack. You've got some good Force units like Jedi Temple Guards and Dago Master, which are a pretty nice one. Dago Yam Master being a nice one where it can use the Force to kind of find you more Force units, which is cool. It does that when it's played or defeated. And you have Trentrak, which is an ambusher, just like Jedi Temple Guards, but only if your opponent controls Force units, so it's like anti-Force ambush. Then your big vehicles you've got like Resupply Carrier for Ramp and Reinforcement Walker as a big top end. Solid stats at 6-9, but can also either gain you more cards or heal you up depending on what you choose when it's played or attacked. You also have good upgrades like Traitors, allow you to steal your opponent's like weaker cards. If the opponent starts putting order eggs on a little unit or a low costing unit, you can snatch it. And you've got some good events like Timely Invention, be able to give you a unit ambush by paying extra cost because you have to pay for the event. And you have Resupply for Ramp and choose sides as a way to like switch control of a unit of yours with your opponents. Now, is Command a good option? I would say yes, Command is an option. Probably not as good as Blue, but it's a good option because you get some ramps, those bigger things, and you've got some good payoffs thanks to Villainy as well. Now let's go into the last aspect, being Cunning. So our last aspect combination is Cunning, and this is one where there's a lot of strong cards and a lot of strong leader and cards, but the bases are what lacks in Cunning. The bases aren't as great compared to the leaders and the other cards. And that's because they don't really do much beneficial, and even though they're jack of all trades, the aspect, the base is kind of lackluster in terms of what you kind of want from a base. So for the Force bases, you got the normal with the Holy City and Crystal Caves, the Tower of Force unit gain the Force. But if you want the rare base requires you as an action to exhaust one of your units to gain the Force. So you can do it multiple times, as long as you can rest units, but if you're resting units, you're not really doing anything with them. So you're not really getting much benefit, but generating the Force, which isn't worth the trade-off. Resting a unit which can't do anything, just to gain the Force from Maul to do a damage to it, which might be even to that same unit. Now for the other bases, if you don't use the Force for this aspect, you have Petrak Arena, which makes Maul a bit stronger when he's deployed. So 26 health, but Maul becomes a 6/6, which might be not a good trade-off. The Bat Village, which can increase the consistency of your opening by giving you 9 cards instead of 6 in your opening hand. Takes with your mulligan now, and also you don't get to keep those 3 extra cards because at the start of your first turn you got to put back to the bottom 3 of them in any order you choose. So make sure you add more consistent of an open, but you don't get to keep the cards you get given, and then you've got the 30 health bases as standard. So Villainy, there's not too much of a there's not too many Force cards in Cunning. Cunning probably is matched with Command for the least amount of like Force cards, especially in the Villainy side. Like Heroism has a lot more Force units in the game, which makes sense because there's like they had the Jedi, like the Republic, the Jedi Order. There's a lot more Force units, anti-Force units identified, where the Sith were more like smaller in number, and then had the whole Rule 2 for a good while as well. So you don't see too many. There aren't. It's kind of like with the series. There's more Force users or Force units or Force cards in the good side than is in the dark side. So with Cunning, it's mainly a aspect for like Underworld and things like that. So that's why you'll see a lot more units that are Underworld. Like the top row here, we got Bazine and Aura for some good turn 1 units. You have the combo of Forlorn and Zuckuss being very good cards that pair well together, giving each other a benefit when they're both out together. You got Boss, who's also another ambusher that can do ping damage every time you play an event, which there is quite a lot of good ones in Cunning, and Cab Aim for your top end as well. And for Force units to the dark side, you're mainly limited to like Shin Hati, Sex Sister, and Balin, which are some pretty good ones. Like Shin Hati is a very good unit, a very good Force unit used in most decks that want to use her aspects, because it's a very solid one, hidden and shielded, plus stronger than her health. Second Sister, solid stats, but not as great because she doesn't offer many benefits to her effects, and there's a lot of good units in that her aspect, her cost really. You got Balin, who's not too bad, can flash things in, but his stats aren't so great for his cost. Like 5 + 5/5 is pretty good, but for standard for whatever some other things can do, is not as great. And then you got some good events and upgrades, so like Frozen Carbonite could be a nice one to hold out to keep things locked down. No Good and Be Dead is the same thing, keep something down locked down for 2 turns, and even Liberated Darkness can help you use the Force to take your opponent's unit to use it how you see fit for the turn. The normal Cunning, there's still not that many Force cards in this one as well. Like there's another one, I think it's the Wind Sage or something like that, but it's not a great one. But you've got Mysterious Hermit, which is a way to get kind of ambush. Also, you can get it Force with a Force common base. You've got Dooku being a not too bad one, being a reset, like re-trigger hidden on cards that have hidden while also having it itself. And then Sorcerer Tund being a 6/6 with shield, which is not really great. It's a good sealed one, but not a great constructed one. And outside, you've got some other good units like Crafty Smuggler, Guerrilla Soldier, and Genius Patrol Fighter for some good utility and good effects, like turn 1 units, indirect damage to be a bit more aggro, and even Geonosis for like good disruption. Because Cunning's like a draggable trades one. Now for events, there's a lot of good ones in Cunning. Like you can probably make good use of like Psychometry, which is a nice way to kind of look like choose a card in your discard pile that has a trait, and look at the top 5 cards of your deck for a card that shares a trait with the card you chose, and then draw it. So it can help you if you've got a fair few Force cards in your discard. You can potentially use it to kind of find things that Force Throw, Force Lightning, and stuff like that. Any card with a Force trait, so it could be a pretty useful one. You got Shin Flurry enabled to ambush things in, so it can make good use of some of those cards that would be very good with ambush, like the Darth Maul from set 3 is a very good example of this. You got a hand control card in Tip Sail, which is a pretty nice one, be able to discard a non-unit card from your opponent's hand. Now there are 2 of them able to cheat things in 2 turns ahead, as long as you only control 1 unit at a time, at the time of using it. And then Waylay is like temporary removal. So is Cunning a good option for Maul? I would say it's a good option, it's a usable option, unlike Aggression is actually a viable, usable option. Might not be the best, but it's a one that has some good kind of potential, just needs to be tested out and tried out a bit more. So this brings us to the last part of the video, being my preferred aspects, because while people might go through this and go, I know where I'm going to go for it, some people might still be stuck, like still have all that information but not know where they want to start with it. So maybe a little bit of help could help with knowing what a preferred aspect combo would be for someone to play it. And I did get a lot of this on my previous video, my first lots of series on it, the first 2 series of it, before people were asking, so I started including it for set 3. So if I were to play Maul, which I will do because I do love Maul and I've been testing it a bit, I would go for blue because it offers you some good things for removal and some good Force payoffs as well to make use of the Force outside just Maul himself, and gives you access to some really strong cards like Force Lightning, Force Throw as well in its own aspects, plus removal like Paradise Side and some solid Force units. So for me playing Maul, I'm going to first and probably end up just sticking with Vigilance. So that is it. That is the end of the video. So hopefully that's helped you understand how to build Darth Maul to suit you and your playstyle, and all the different options, what's viable and what's not, and all the things you can do about it. I probably will get a Darth Maul deck profile up at some point in the future once I've tested a bit more, but at the moment I'm preparing, make sure I've got my deck for my first PQ this month. But that is it. Thank you for watching. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and check us out tomorrow when we have the third sister covered for the next one. Bye for now.